So tell me if you've heard this one. A handsome guy from out of town blows into a coastal seaside resort that's got the fair and various attractions on the boardwalk. There he meets a girl who happens to be a vampire, and she is harassed and involved in this kind of gang of youth vampires that are terrorizing the boardwalk and this kind of local seaside community, killing people that kind of hang out in this kind of cave, and they try to recruit our stranger Seth, maybe to feel him out, maybe to recruit him, and of course this leads to an inevitable showdown. Does that movie sound familiar to you? Well, we are talking Cold Hearts, which is a 1999 movie clearly influenced by The Lost Boys and trying to have a 90s almost reimagining of that story. Very 90s, I'm going to point out. Out of many of the movies that I reviewed here, this one really sticks out as 90s with the hair, the fashion. It's kind of funny. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, this one is notable for having a role for Amy Jo Johnson, the Pink Rangers from Power Rangers, or one of them. And she plays a kind of supporting role here as a good vampire. So yeah, effectively it's a very similar story to Lost Boys. We have effectively this kind of vampire community that's seemingly just living in this coastal community, and we've got those kind of vampires that want to feast and victimize people, and we have a handful of vampires. There's two female vampires and there's one other male vampire that try to just live off blood from blood banks and things like that. And then in blows Seth with his group of friends who are on vacation. He gets involved with our main female good vampire, and the bad guy vampire doesn't want obviously Seth anything to do with her, because obviously they have a history. And this Seth actually has a little bit of a supernatural secret himself that is not a vampire. Anyway, so let's talk about what works in this movie's favour. If you like the 90s, if you miss the 90s, highlights, fashion, all of that kind of stuff, then you'll get a kick out of this very, very 90s, as I say, feeling movie. It really is. I mean, as much as the Lost Boys tried to have kind of high fashion, I think, in this 80s aesthetic, this one does it as well. But all the kind of the vampires look like a 90s boy band. This is the thing, with kind of like one's wearing like goggles and stuff. One's got like horrible highlights. It's quite funny. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting little time capsule of a movie in some ways. Now this, unlike The Lost Boys, doesn't really have much of a plot, to be honest with you. It is in a way more of a slice of life type scenario, with only minor kind of story elements in it, to be brutally honest with you. It is more about the characters interacting, and this movie focuses more on the actual vampires rather than the kind of like the Jason Patrick's character in The Lost Boys, for example, is the kind of the main lead. This is more about the relationships between these different kind of factions of vampires, so to speak. So it does have a little bit of an interesting idea to it. It's just effectively these vampire little sects, little kind of groups, just act like groups of humans, if that makes sense. They just have different kind of point of views, different kind of attributes, different personalities. So that was kind of interesting. The movie is very low budget, but obviously having this all take place on the kind of the boardwalk of this kind of coastal town with all the rides and stuff, and the fair music and stuff, obviously it's trying to channel The Lost Boys. And if you are a fan of The Lost Boys, then if you don't mind, very low budget, somewhat kind of unremarkable story, then you may want to check it out. I think the acting is reasonable, if I'm honest. Like I said, it's in a way, it's more about the personal relationships between the characters. And although I think some of the dialogue is a little on the weak side, I don't think that the delivery of it is necessarily bad from our characters, especially our main female vampire, Vicky, who I think comes across as somewhat of a unique character, I have to say, in many ways. She's, you know, you get a sense that she is quite a strong character, but she's very much a kind of somewhat of a lone wolf, but she does care for her, you know, kind of the people that she is sort of friendly with. I quite liked her character, I have to say. Effects-wise are limited. But yeah, I gotta say, they're still kind of quite fun, and the vampires depicted in here are quite vicious. I mean, this group of the Lost Boys, should we call them? You know, they kill a reasonable amount of people. I mean, it's that you would think that there would just be like police all over this place, because there's so many kind of bodies getting dropped, and like I said, this just feels like it's just a day in the life of, really, nothing really special. Yeah, I mean, it's a somewhat of a meandering plot. Let's transition to what doesn't work. It's somewhat of a meandering plot. There's not really much going on in this film. The only kind of real impetus of what you would feel would be of change is this guy Seth, and he's not on screen all that much. And he's like this stranger that kind of disrupts the status quo, so to speak. But we get kind of a fight at the end, but. The plot is very kind of slight here. It's more just like conversations with different people, different vampires and things like that. Not much in the way of a narrative, it has to be said. I think the acting is okay. I mean, it's not nothing to write home about, but it's not distractingly bad. But the dialogue isn't brilliant. I think the costuming is quite poor. Like, for example, our main guy, who looks like Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai, he's wearing this like jacket, and it's like brand new. It's like not a sort of, you know, it's like not a bit of dirt on it and things like that. It's just, it looks a bit clean. I don't know. It has that very like 90s aesthetic to it. We have this big climactic fight with this Seth, who is I guess our male protagonist. And he has a supernatural secret, and our bad guy vampire, and it's the most unimpressive fight you'll see. I have to say, it's quite poor. There are a couple of kind of dramatic moments. Amy Jo Johnson's character in particular, without telling you what happens, she has quite a dramatic scene. But I felt the aftermath of it was undercut by, it just kind of swept under the rug. I mean, something happens, and Vicky, our main female vampire, our good vampire, you would think it would have more of an impact than it really does in the film. And there are some kind of people around, there's other characters like these kind of friends of Seth that have come in, you know, they don't really have anything to do. They show up a few times, so it feels quite directionless, I have to say. It feels low budget. It kind of tries to capture the Lost Boys, but it's really just like not a particularly interesting film. It has a couple of elements. You think, oh, you know, that was okay, but as a whole, it's pretty just meandering. It's maybe not dull, but it just doesn't feel it goes anywhere, and like it has wasted potential. So it's a pretty unremarkable film, if I'm honest. Die-hard vampire fans who really like the Lost Boys, if you want more of the same, it's probably better than the sequels, but that's not saying much. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.